What's up you guys, Steve with Magic Meadow Money. Pioneer is a really fun and engaging format that's really important for the success of Magic the Gathering long term. So today's video is going to focus on why Pioneer is such an important and fun format and why Wizards is doing things to promote the format, such as printing the new Pioneer Challenger decks, which are coming out in about a month on October 15th. And yes, I will be doing a full review on those decks and whether or not they're worth purchasing coming up later down the road, closer to the release date in the middle of October. So make sure to subscribe and join the Wolfpack so you can see those videos when they come out. Pioneer is really important for players for two major reasons. Number one, it does provide an option to play a constructed format that doesn't rotate. And number two, it provides an environment where you can play your favorite standard cards for an extended period of time where they can actually be competitive, which extends their effective shelf life, which in turn reduces the pain that comes from standard rotation. Now you may be thinking that we already have a couple of formats that provide those same benefits for players. A little bit of Legacy, we're not really going to touch too much on that today, but we will a little bit at the end. And the other main format, of course, is Modern, the biggest format for non-rotating cards and constructed format that can be competitive and a lot of fun. But the big problem with Modern is that it doesn't provide a good environment for players to transition to for their first non-rotating environment because of the simple price barrier. It is a very expensive format, that's just the reality of it. Even if you play the cheaper decks, they just add up so much. You can't realistically get a 75 card deck and expect to compete or have a 75 card collection. Realistically, any deck needs at least 100 cards, probably more around 125, to have different options for sideboarding and metagaming if you really want to get into the format. And that's just if you have one deck, and every card in that format is really expensive for the most part. And then it also doesn't provide a very good shelf life for your standard cards because of the simple power leaps that we've seen in Modern due to Modern Horizons 1 and Modern Horizons 2. While I personally love Modern, I think it's really important to have another non-rotating format that is more approachable. Remember, Modern now allows cards for almost 20 years. It goes back to Mirrodin, which came out in 2003. That is just a huge card pool that's really intimidating to get into if you're newer to Magic and maybe been playing for a year or two and you're about to experience your first standard rotation. Pioneer, on the other hand, only goes back to Return to Ravnica, which is 2003, which is way smaller card pool, and very importantly, it doesn't include the expensive premium sets of Modern Horizons 1 and Modern Horizons 2, and also something that's really important is that Return to Ravnica is also when Wizards changed their printing philosophy, and rather than releasing a product and just printing a whole bunch of it and putting it in a warehouse and that was it, that was the full release, instead they extended the printing policies for a year, 15, 18 months after the release of a set, where they would continue to release it if there was demand. So the overall supply of these sets is much higher than the Mirrodin through Innistrad sets that take place that are legal in Modern but not Pioneer. Let's now dive into the many benefits of Pioneer and why it's such a great format that you should consider getting into. Number one, no Fetchlands. That's important for many reasons. The first and most obvious one is that Fetchlands are very expensive and very prominent, and that you need them in Modern to compete at all. Basically any mana base requires them. Even monocolored decks still benefit and use Fetchlands. The lack of the original 10 Fetchlands being legal in Pioneer is also really important for mechanics such as Escape and Delve. These are really powerful mechanics when you have Fetchlands, so you're just reducing the cost of these cards for free just by playing your lands, and that's really important to note here. You got to remember, when Khans of Tarkir first came out in the Pro Tours, there were control decks that were playing Evolving Wilds just so they could enhance Dig Through Time, right? Evolving Wilds is a terrible card. It should not see standard play, and it's in the Pro Tour, right? These guys are genius deck builders, and they were playing in a blue-black control deck. They were playing Evolving Wilds, so that way they could just reduce the cost of their Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise. That gives you an idea of how powerful the Fetchlands are for these effects. That's also why these cards have to be banned in Modern. That's why you don't get to play Dig Through Time or Treasure Cruise. It's because of the Fetchlands. And there's maybe some other reasons as well, but a Fetchlands is a huge part of it that just allows you to get so many cards in your graveyard so quickly and really abuse these Delve cards. Another reason Pioneer is so great is because you can actually play your lands and not worry about them all being destroyed. There's nothing like Stone Rain or Boil or Blood Moon or Choke. None of those are legal in Pioneer, and it allows you to relax and be able to play your cards and be able to play your lands and not worried about just getting stone rained out of the game and never being able to cast your spells. Another reason why Pioneer is so great is because when you compare it to Legacy and Modern, there are way fewer combo decks in the format. And if you like playing combo decks, that's fine, whatever. There's a special breed of people who love playing combo decks, and it's quite a bit of you. A lot of people like playing combo decks. But if you don't like playing combo decks, you probably hate playing against combo decks. And you don't have to face that as much in Pioneer as you do in other formats. Now, Modern has done a lot over the last few years, a lot, to try to reduce the amount of combo decks that just come over and take over the format. But when you have such a big card pool, it's inevitable that combo decks will continue to happen. There's just too many interactions between cards, and you have almost 20 years worth of cards in the format. Pioneer, on the other hand, actually is about combat and creatures and engaging with the battlefield and interacting with your opponent. You very rarely see a Pioneer game that's just simply two ships passing in the night, which is code for extremely boring Magic, at least from a viewer's standpoint. Imagine a world where you get to play Solitaire and I get to play Solitaire, and we share our screens, and so you got two people who are commenting on both people playing Solitaire, and one person plays faster than the other, and that person's wins. Why would you watch that? There are so many Twitch channels out there. That one's not going to get views, and that's just the reality with combo decks that don't interact with each other. That's what you're watching. It's not very fun. Like, it's engaging, it's got some novelty. It's fun once or twice, but it's not consistently fun to watch at all. And on that note of interacting with your opponent, I will point out that there's no such thing as boggles in Pioneer, which is great. There's a boggles-esque deck, but it's not a true boggle of a one-drop with hexproof. Instead, you're playing your creatures and you're playing things like Selfless Savior and other protection effects to protect those creatures rather than actually having hexproof themselves. Another reason why Pioneer is such a great format is because you can actually rely on your opponents being tapped out and knowing that the coast is then clear. There are no free spells in Pioneer. You don't have things like mutagenic growth, the force cycle, the new elemental pitch cycles. Rather, when your opponents are tapped out, hey, I now can strike, the coast is clear, and I have an advantage that they can't interact with for a turn. There are also two other cards that are part of Modern, and they always will be, and that's fine, but they're not part of Pioneer that I think are really important to mention, and that's Cavern of Souls and Aether Vial. Now, I think creature decks are awesome. I think creature decks are really fun. Tribal decks are really cool. Now, we have unclaimed territory in Pioneer, and that kind of opened our eyes to realize how ridiculous Cavern of Souls really is. I mean, everyone already knew Cavern of Souls is crazy, but once you realize how good unclaimed territory is, and it doesn't make your creatures of that type uncounterable, you really start to realize, man, by comparison, Cavern of Souls is crazy. Aether Vial is another card that's, again, great. It's with creature decks. That's fun. Creatures are fun. People should play with creatures in Magic. But Aether Vial is just insane. It provides an absolutely cascading, snowballing amount of mana advantage, which is just bonkers, and then it also gives flash to all of your creatures, not to mention the uncounterable effect of it. It's just a really, really, really powerful card that doesn't need a place in every single format, and you don't have to play it in Pioneer. The last reason I want to point out why Pioneer is such an important format for Magic the Gathering is for team-constructed tournaments that don't need to include Legacy. Now, Legacy, again, it's a really fun format. I'm not trying to trash the format by any means. It's really cool. There's a lot of awesome decks, awesome cards. It's a really great format. But realistically, if you want to play the format in paper, and because of the reserve list, you have to make a choice in life. You have to decide, do I want to own a car, or do I want to build up a mana base for my Legacy deck? They are prohibitively expensive, and unless you get an opportunity to play Legacy all the time, like at least a couple times a month, and you have a lot of discretionary income, it's just not a realistic format that you can responsibly play and actually be able to put food on your table. So now that you don't have to worry about finding a Legacy player in order to go play a team-constructed format, you can just find a Modern player, which Modern is a very, very popular format, and albeit expensive, it's not nearly as expensive as the mana bases of Legacy decks alone. And then it's very easy to find someone who does play Modern, and then you play Pioneer and Standard. So it's just much more widely available, and it's so much easier to actually go and play in these team tournaments and be on a team with your friends and get advice, which is also a great way to get introduced into Modern and into Pioneer if you are not one of those players, right? If you've only played Pioneer or you've only played Standard, now you get to play with your teammates, kind of learn those formats and get an introduction to them, and you simply just get to have fun playing a tournament with your friends. What else did I miss? What other things can you think of about Pioneer that make it a really important format for the success of Magic and for us as a community of players? Let me know in the comments below. We'll see you next time.